The sun rose over Maplewood Lane, casting a warm glow over the neatly trimmed hedges and meticulously maintained lawns. It was a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood where every mailbox stood like a sentinel of normalcy, and every front porch boasted a welcome mat that promised tranquility and neighborly smiles. It was here that I found my home, a modest yet charming abode nestled at the end of the cul-de-sac, shaded by ancient oak trees, whose whispered secrets only I seemed to hear. It was also here that Karen reigned supreme, her influence seeping into the cracks of the community like an unwelcome draft. She was the self-appointed queen of the homeowners association, her rule characterized by a stringent adherence to a code of conduct only she fully understood. With her blonde bob and penchant for pastel cardigans, she patrolled the sidewalks as if each step confirmed her status as the guardian of suburban harmony. My dog, a gentle golden retriever named Max, was an anomaly in her orderly world. To me, Max was a companion, a loyal friend whose wagging tail and soulful eyes brought a sense of warmth to my days. To Karen, he was a disruption, a blemish on the otherwise pristine canvas she sought to preserve. It began with a letter slipped into my mailbox, a formal notice on HOA letterhead bearing her signature. It was a catalog of grievances: Max's presence on the sidewalks, the imaginary noise he supposedly made, and the dreaded possibility of him sullying her precise landscape. At first, I responded with calm detachment, filing away her complaints in the drawer of minor annoyances. I brushed it off as Karen being Karen, a minor inconvenience in my otherwise peaceful existence. But Karen was relentless. Her crusade against Max grew with the fervor of a storm gathering strength over open waters. She enlisted allies, whispering tales of danger and irresponsibility to neighbors who were too polite or too timid to contradict her. The notices increased, each one more absurd than the last. One accused Max of digging holes in yards he had never visited. Another painted him as a menace to children who adored him. It was as if Karen had cast herself in a drama of her own making, a heroine battling imaginary foes in the name of community order. I marveled at the energy she expended, a force of nature constrained by the confines of her suburban kingdom. Through it all, I remained a quiet observer, a rock in the face of her rising tide. I took Max for our daily walks with a renewed sense of purpose, letting him roam the paths lined with blooming azaleas and the echo of children's laughter. I greeted neighbors with a nod and a smile, a silent acknowledgement that life, like the seasons, would change, and Karen's storm would eventually pass. Yet, beneath my calm exterior, something simmered. It was not anger, for I had long since learned the futility of that emotion. Rather, it was a deep, steady resolve, a quiet understanding that patience and time often revealed truths more profound than any confrontation. I watched as Karen's efforts reached their zenith, a crescendo of correspondence and whispered campaigns that seemed to consume her very essence. And then, one bright morning, as the sun rose once more over Maplewood Lane, casting its golden light on the world waking to another day, I received a letter of my own. Not from Karen this time, but from an office in the city, embossed with the seal of authority. It was a deed, a document that bore my name alongside the sweeping expanse of land upon which our little neighborhood was built. It was a fact I had long known, a detail as intrinsic to me as the air I breathed. But Karen had not known, not yet. Her storm was about to meet the immovable force of reality, and I, with Max by my side and a quiet smile playing on my lips, was ready to weather whatever came next. Karen's decree was the first sigh of a gathering storm. One might have thought she was declaring war with the way words spilled from her mouth, a relentless cascade of bylaws and regulations. Her target? My faithful hound, Max. His crime? Being too boisterous, too big, too present for her idyllic vision of suburban harmony. Her campaign was subtle at first. A note slipped under my door, typed in that sterile, impersonal font that only machines and bureaucrats seem to favor. It spoke of appropriate pet sizes, leash lengths, and an almost Orwellian notion of canine decorum. Max had violated them all, apparently, by just being himself. I crumpled the paper, a symbolic act that did nothing to quell the rising tide of absurdity. Karen's true genius lay not in her rules, but in the art of escalation. She wielded her clipboard like a scepter, a symbol of her self-anointed authority. Every morning she was there, watching, waiting, her eyes narrowing into slits whenever Max bounded through the yard, happy and oblivious. The citations followed, each more ludicrous than the last. My mailbox became a repository of her grievances. The fence was too high, the grass too wild, and the new addition, a supposed violation of HOA pet restrictions. Each letter was a testament to her persistence, her belief that order could be imposed through sheer willpower. I found myself wondering how she had the time. Did she lie awake at night, crafting lists of infractions, honing her next line of attack like a general preparing for battle? Or was it simpler than that, a pastime born of boredom, a need for control in a world that often spun beyond her grasp? Gossip, Karen's secondary weapon, spread like a vine choking the life out of a tree. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, voices drifting through open windows, carried by the summer breeze. Each retelling grew more elaborate, more fantastical. The tale of Max transformed into a saga of neighborhood conquest, a monstrous dog dominating the otherwise placid streets. It was strange how quickly people believed. The power of a well-placed rumor, I mused. Karen's stories painted me as a negligent owner, a rogue element in her carefully curated community. It was almost impressive, the ease with which she spun fiction into fact. But I knew the truth. I owned the land beneath her feet, the soil that cradled her home, and the streets she patrolled. A fact as yet undisclosed, a card held close to my chest. It was ironic, really. Karen's campaigns of control, her need to reign supreme in this little patch of earth, all unfolded in a place that was mine to direct. The irony tasted sweet. I let the knowledge linger, savoring its potential. There was power in patience, in waiting for the right moment to reveal the ace up my sleeve. Karen was playing a game of chess, but she didn't realize that the board, the pieces, and even the rules were mine to command. The storm was building, its winds gathering force. But for now, I stood calm at the center. Max by my side, his tail wagging in blissful ignorance of the battles waged around him. I could almost hear the ticking of the clock, counting down to the moment when the scales would tip and the true measure of control would shift. Until then, I would watch and wait and let Karen believe she was winning. The sun crept over the ridge of our little neighborhood, casting long shadows that stretched across manicured lawns and pristine driveways. It was a community built on order, on quiet conformity. I stood at my window, the slow hum of suburbia a distant chorus, and considered the blueprint of my strategy. Karen had, in her righteous zeal, forgotten one thing. Land is not always visible above ground. I had spent weeks documenting her vendetta. Every snub, each cutting remark, the passive-aggressive notes slipped into my mailbox. Her latest, a handwritten missive declaring my dog a menace to the community, lay on the table like a gauntlet thrown. But I had learned patience over the years. The slow river cuts the deepest canyon. The HOA meeting was set for Thursday. By then, every scrap of evidence would be in order. A neat dossier of pettiness, a gallery of grievances. I knew Karen would be there, armed with her usual righteous indignation. She loved a crowd, loved the way her voice could command attention. Her opinions held aloft like some sacred truth. She was the queen of this suburban chessboard, or so she thought. My dog Max snoozed contentedly at my feet, oblivious to the drama unfolding over his head. He was a gentle giant, all floppy ears and clumsy paws. The idea that he could be a menace was laughable, yet Karen's crusade marched on, her sights set squarely on us. I took a slow breath, feeling the quiet power of preparation settle around me like a cloak. The land was mine, though few knew it yet. An inheritance from a grandfather whose love of literal foundations had built my metaphorical ones. The neighborhood had grown around his holdings, like ivy on an old mansion. And Karen, in her quest to cleanse the community of perceived threats, had overlooked this inconvenient truth. As the day wore on, shadows lengthened and pooled in the corners of my home. I thought of roots growing slowly, inexorably beneath the surface. Karen had been a thorn in my side, but I was the oak, deep-rooted and unyielding. On the day of the meeting, the community center buzzed with anticipation. Neighbors gathered, drawn by the promise of drama. I walked in, my heart a steady drumbeat, each step measured and deliberate. Karen was already there, surrounded by her acolytes, her voice strident and sharp as she laid out her case. I watched her, a storm in a teacup, oblivious to the tsunami gathering on the horizon. When it was my turn to speak, I stood with quiet confidence. The room stilled. A sea of expectant faces turned toward me. I began with the facts, clear and irrefutable. Each piece of evidence a stone in my foundation, building a case that would withstand any gale. And then, the revelation. A simple declaration. The land was mine. The silence that followed was a living thing. I watched as Karen's expression shifted, the realization dawning that her fortress was built on sand. The irony delicious, a bitter fruit served cold. Her voice, so powerful moments before, faltered in the face of reality. Max, ever the innocent, wagged his tail contentedly beside me, blissfully unaware of the human drama playing out over him. Karen's campaign had crumbled, her reign of pettiness undone by the very foundations she had taken for granted. In the end, as the meeting dispersed, I lingered in the quiet echo of victory. The community murmured around me, a river of conversation flowing past. Karen, chastened and diminished, slipped away with barely a whisper. The land had spoken, and the roots of my quiet power ran deep. As I walked home with Max, the sun dipped low, casting the world in a warm, forgiving glow. There was a certain peace in knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply to let the truth rise, slow and inevitable, like the dawn. The wind swirled with a hint of autumn in the air as I sat on my porch, watching the leaves begin their slow dance to the ground. It was one of those rare afternoons where time seemed to stretch, allowing the world to breathe and settle into a comfortable rhythm. But beneath that peace, a storm of a different kind was brewing in our neighborhood. Karen's crusade against my dog had reached its peak. She'd plastered the community notice board with venomous notes, each one dripping with righteous indignation. My dog, a gentle soul with eyes like melted chocolate, had become her target, her scapegoat in her quest for order. But I knew something she didn't, and it was time to let the truth unfurl. The deed to the land, carefully stored in an old family chest, was more powerful than any of Karen's notes or meetings. My great-grandfather's legacy, passed down through generations, held secrets that Karen couldn't even begin to fathom. Our family had owned this land long before the streets bore their names, long before the HOA was a twinkle in a planner's eye. I sat quietly, letting the weight of history anchor me. My fingers traced the edges of the yellowed document, feeling the texture of time itself. It was a tangible connection to the past, a reminder of roots that ran deeper than Karen's petty grievances. The lawyer's office had been a sanctuary of calm efficiency. I had presented the deed, watched as understanding dawned in the attorney's eyes. Words were exchanged, papers drafted, and with each stroke of the pen, my resolve solidified. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about standing firm in the face of unwarranted malice. Karen's authority was a facade, a castle built on sand, and I was the tide, ready to wash it away. The irony was not lost on me. The land she claimed to rule was, in fact, mine. A silent amusement danced in my thoughts as I anticipated her reaction. Her fortress of control would crumble with a whisper of truth. I imagined the scenes unfolding in Karen's mind, her expectations, her plans, all unraveling like a delicate tapestry caught in a storm. There was a certain poetic justice in letting her uncover the truth herself. No confrontation, no grand announcement, just a revelation born of her own doing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. I thought of my dog, peacefully napping at my feet, blissfully unaware of the human drama swirling around him. He was a creature of simplicity, his loyalty unwavering. The next community meeting approached, its arrival inevitable. I would attend, not with fanfare, but with the quiet grace of someone who knows the truth. The papers would rest in my pocket, unseen yet powerful. A simple gesture, revealing the true weight of ownership, would suffice. In that moment, I understood the deeper battle. It wasn't just against Karen, but against the very idea that people like her could bully and dictate without consequence. It was about reclaiming space and dignity, about drawing a line that could not be crossed. The neighborhood would soon know, and Karen, she would learn that some battles are lost before they even begin. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting intricate shadows on the pavement. I watched from my porch, the wooden steps warm beneath me, as Karen stormed away from the latest HOA meeting, her expression a cocktail of disbelief, frustration, and a hint of something resembling fear. The irony was thick enough to taste, like biting into an overripe fruit, sour and sweet at once. Her plans had unraveled like an old sweater, each tugged thread revealing more of the truth she'd tried so hard to conceal. She had underestimated the quiet resolve of the neighborhood, the very people she thought she could control. But most of all, she had underestimated me and the land beneath her feet. The irony was almost poetic. The land she walked on, the very stage for her meddling theatrics, was mine. A family legacy, a quiet inheritance, left to me by my grandfather. A man of few words and deliberate actions. He'd loved this land, its trees, and its quiet resilience. I'd honored him not by flaunting it, but by allowing it to remain a sanctuary for community and nature alike. Her vendetta against my dog, Max, had been the last straw. A futile attempt to assert her authority, her fluorescent clipboard becoming a symbol of her misguided dominance. Max, with his gentle eyes and unwavering loyalty, was as much a part of this neighborhood as the ancient oaks lining the streets. "Ban him," she said. "But how do you ban the heart of a place?" I leaned back, letting the sun warm my face, thinking of how she had tried to rally the neighbors, manipulating rules with a rigidity fit for a farce. Her voice, sharp and insistent, had become a background noise, like the distant hum of traffic, ever present, but easily ignored. Today, the meeting took a turn, as I quietly presented the deed. Silence blanketed the room, a collective intake of breath. The realization was swift and unkind to her. The power she thought she held slipped through her fingers like sand. Eyes met mine across the room, nods of understanding, smiles that spoke of shared victories. An unspoken camaraderie blossomed, nurtured by her folly. I said little, preferring to let the truth speak for itself. There was no need for gloating. The land was mine, yes, but it belonged to them too. Those who cherished it for what it was, not what it could be turned into. Karen had left, her footsteps echoing defeat. The street felt lighter, a burden lifted. I stood, stretching, feeling the earth solid beneath me. My thoughts drifted to the future, to what we could build together, not through domination, but through unity and respect. Max trotted up, nuzzling my hand, his presence a steady comfort. Together, we watched the sun dip lower, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The scene was timeless, a moment suspended, untouched by the chaos of human ambition. In the distance, laughter floated on the breeze, children playing, their joy untainted. Restoration had begun, quietly, steadily, like the turning of seasons. Karen's reign of pettiness had ended, leaving space for renewal. We, the quiet ones, the patient stewards, had prevailed. The neighborhood was ours again, a tapestry of lives interwoven with the land, each thread stronger for having endured. In this, I found peace, and amidst the gentle rustle of leaves, the contented sigh of the earth itself, I knew my grandfather would be proud.